appearance on Dion's Daily Dose does not imply endorsement from or by any candidate or guest. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by Dion Bergeron or Dion's Daily Dose are his own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of any guest. Material and information presented is for general information purposes only. The Dion's Daily Dose name in all forms and abbreviations are the property of its owners, and its use does not imply endorsement of or opposition to any specific organization, product, or service. If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Dion's Daily Dose. Tonight, we have a very special guest. We have someone who is going against convention, which you guys have been watching my show for any amount of time. You know how much I love that. This guy is, like I said, going against the convention. We'll bring him on screen and have him explain. But essentially, he's running for lieutenant governor all on his own, which is kind of almost unheard of here in Indiana. It's a rubber stamp process. But he says, no, that's not good enough. I have a better idea, which is intriguing to me personally. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Micah Beckwith. He is running for our lieutenant governor.
Hey, Dion. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So first, if you don't mind, really briefly, first of all, why? Why this? Why
I lost the bet. I lost the bet, so no.
Okay,
no.
All right. Hey, you know what?
No, people ask me that. They say, why are you doing this? Yeah, I've been involved in the political world in Indiana since 2016. I've been a delegate at the state convention since 2016. I grew up in Hillsdale, Michigan, where Hillsdale College is at, and my parents, obviously were very much lovers of our nation, and they taught us the Constitution and the history, American history, and we are very blessed amongst world. I love world history, and there has never been a nation like the United States, and we are incredibly blessed. God has smiled down on us by placing us in this nation, and if we don't steward this will be one of the greatest travesties of history if this generation lets liberty and freedom slip through its fingers. And I think that's happening. And so for me, ultimately, and it may sound cliche, but I have a role to play. You have a role to play. We all have a role to play. And I believe this is one way I can serve my country. I can serve my neighbors and my family and my community and say, hey, I'm gonna steward what God has given us. I'm going to defend the Constitution. And really, more importantly, I'm going to defend truth, right? What God says is right. We're going to stand for that. We're not going to back down. We're not going to apologize for it. And I believe if we can get back to truth, you'll see a lot of healing happen in our land. But think about all the destruction that's happening around our nation right now. It all stems from lies. People being fed lies, whether it's in school, boys being told they can be girls and girls being told they can be boys. I mean, how stupid of a lie is that? But it's taking hold. And look at the destruction that is created. And then, Marxism being pushed in our colleges, our college campuses. One of the greatest lies of all time is that Marxism actually could work. And yet, students buy into that left and right. And so we've got to stand up, and truth will win. I guarantee it. You just have to speak it out. And so John 8:32 says, you'll know the truth, and the truth will set you free. And so if you want freedom, you got to speak truth so people will know the truth. So that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's kind of a long answer, but that's my heart.
No, that's good. So why specifically lieutenant governor? A lot of people may or may not be aware of this. The governor in Indiana actually has very little power. The legislature comparatively has vastly more power than the governor. However, a lot of people don't realize how much power the lieutenant governor wields and in the various chairing of the committees and stuff like that.
Yeah, so the lieutenant governor actually, from a national standpoint, is probably one of the most robust lieutenant governor offices in the country. The lieutenant governor is the president of the Senate, so you're involved in the Senate proceedings. You cast a tie-breaking vote. If there's a tie, you have influence within the Senate. You have influence within the legislature. You sit on about 26 different boards. You chair some really important boards like the Board of Agriculture. The Lieutenant Governor is the Secretary of Agriculture. And so there's a lot of influence. I think for me, why I feel like I would make a great Lieutenant Governor is because ultimately the Lieutenant Governor, more than anything, is a pulpit. It's a bully pulpit. It's a platform to influence. And I love to teach. I love to get out and influence people towards truth. I'm very good at that. That's how God's gifted me. And so as Lieutenant Governor, I can get into schools, I can get into communities, I can champion the agenda of a conservative constitutional party, which is what the Republican Party is supposed to be. Right. And so I'll make sure to champion that. And I'll also make sure to stop against this like left sliding Republican Party nonsense that's going on, where we just keep going further and further left because we want to, appease the moderates or the Democrat. We want to be Democrat light or something like that. Like, I can stand up to that. I'll be in a place where I can actually help influence us back into the right place. So really, to me, the Lieutenant Governor, more than anything, is a position of influence. And I think we haven't really used the influence as well as maybe we could have for the many years, because Lieutenant Governors sometimes in Indiana just sort of get told to sit in a corner, don't speak, and look pretty, like whatever you want. And I just think it's a constitutionally created office. Mm-hmm. It needs to be an effective office for the people. And that's why I'm running.
Awesome. I am a huge fan of anyone who kind of tackles the convention and the tradition when it is an inefficient or incorrect tradition. Yeah. Some traditions obviously are positive and we have them for a reason. But in this case, there's always been kind of at least for many, many years, kind of a rubber stamp process. I was a delegate in 2020 and 2022. I'm running for it again this year. I may or may not make it. But it especially like previously, some of the other offices were, an actual thing. But Lieutenant Governor was just, this is who we're going with. And it's just kind of assumed. And so the fact that you're choosing to do it differently is, for one, very interesting, but more importantly, extremely inspiring, because I like to see people who do things differently and don't just accept the status quo. Yeah. So I'm really excited, no matter how it goes for you, which, sounds good. Like I will say your team is very motivated.
Yeah, we got a good team around us. I mean, God has brought an amazing team to help in this endeavor. Couldn't do it without them. And but I think people, I'm just one person in this. I know it's the Micah Beckwith campaign, but it's not about me. It's about the movement, and it's about standing for conservative values and truth. And so I think people just see me a little bit as the tip of the spear, but it takes everyone to be able to make that spear effective. And so that's, it is unconventional, but the delegates have always had the authority to pick the Lieutenant Governor. And so what I'm saying is, if the delegates have the authority to pick, why are they always told who to pick? And it's never good when a politician, good or bad, it doesn't matter if it's a good politician or a bad politician, but when a politician tells someone you have to vote a certain way, that's not a good thing. And when, listen, the governor has always said to the delegates, I want this person for my lieutenant governor, and the delegates then just confirm whatever the governor says. I don't believe a politician should give away another elected office. I don't think any politician, if it's a constitutionally created office that's supposed to represent the people, then the people should be the ones who allow somebody to sit in that office for a set number of years, right? It's a stewardship thing. If you don't own the office, no one owns the office. There's not a politician that owns their office anywhere in this land. It's all the people. The people own that. We're just saying you get to sit in this office for a time being to serve your constituents, the people, and then get out and let someone else do it. And so that's why I'm running, because I believe that lieutenant governor's office really should be in the hands of the people, not a carrot. It's usually a carrot that is given away by the governor, right? The governor says, hey, if you help me win this election, I'll give you that lieutenant governor's office as a reward for your hard work, Mr. Smith or whoever it is. And then they say, yeah, I'll work for you. And then they get elected, and then you get the reward of the office. But that's really, to me, that's offensive, because that's not their office to give away. You know what I mean? You're giving away something you don't own.
Yep.
And so
it belongs to we the people.
Yeah. So that's why. So I hope what this does is not just, I'm not looking at just my race. I hope from now on, I've kind of exposed sort of a little glitch in the matrix, right? Like people are kind of like, oh, I didn't realize you could do this. This is kind of cool. And there hasn't been any changes in the Constitution, any changes in law. It's totally okay to do this. But I hope it changes our mindset as Hoosiers for many years to come, that every 4 years we see this as an election of the people. It's not just a giveaway office. And I believe the people will make a really good decision on the ticket. So the pushback I get sometimes is like, well, it's like a marriage. You got to let the governor pick his spouse, right? Like to me, I'm kind of like, no, it's not like a marriage. This is government, not family. Okay. So it's not like a marriage at all. But they'll say like the governor has to be able to have somebody that they can trust and they can work with. And I'm saying, I agree with that. But do you not think the delegates are smart enough to make that choice on who the governor should work with? Right. Because you're either saying that the delegates are too stupid to choose the right person. So get out of the way, stupid little voter, and let this politician pick, because we'll just pat you on the head over here. You go sit in the corner. I don't believe that's the case. I believe the people are very smart. I believe the people know best. And so, I don't want a politician telling the people you have to vote for this one person or else. And so that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Okay. All right. Phenomenal. I dig it, for what it's worth. I do. So my next question for you is, okay, why you? Why should the delegates pick you over, let's just say, forget, that it's the governor's pick or whatever. But let's say there's a good person. Why you over them? Yeah.
So I've proven that I'm a fighter, a bold fighter for conservative values. When I travel the state, I tell people I don't want just a conservative anymore. I don't want just somebody that believes the right thing. You have to be bold enough to fight for the right thing. We're in a ideological war of lies versus truth, good versus evil. I mean, everyone can see it. No one's. I mean, it's like if you don't see it, you're willfully ignorant at this point. And so we need bold fighters. Now, what I've done, I've proven that I'm a bold fighter by I'm a pastor. That's what I do for my day job. Okay. And in 2020, I was running for Congress as well in the 5th district. And so we did in Indiana. I did well. I didn't win. It was my first run for office. I did well. I took 3rd out of 15 candidates, and people were kind of like, how did this pastor guy take 3rd out of 15? I beat some really, high profile people. Yeah. But what happened was the Lord really gave me a platform because of my congressional race to help defend people and their liberties during the COVID lockdowns. So the government, first of all, the government had no authority to lock down churches, to lock down businesses, to call anyone essential or non-essential. And so what I did was I began to teach people about standing on their religious liberties. And I wrote a letter anytime anyone would ask, I wrote 4,500 religious exemption letters that help people stand on their own religious principles. So I would write letters and say, hey, Mr. Employer or Mr. School or the military, you're trying to get rid of this person. You're trying to fire this person, kick this person out of the military, kick this person out of school. You can't do it because they're standing on their God-given right that the government has not given them, God has given them. And the government's not allowed to infringe on those rights. And I, as a pastor, am putting my name and my church's name on the line, standing with them and saying, you can't pass. And we're standing up to you. And so we helped countless people keep their jobs, keep their degrees, their schooling, because I was willing. And there weren't very many pastors and churches that were putting their1church's name and their name on the line saying, hey, we're standing up to Big Daddy government right now. Right. And I boldly did it. I gladly did it. And we helped so many people. And it was phenomenal. I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Wouldn't even question it in a second. And we were right. after what we've seen with COVID and the nonsense, and we know we were right, because guess what? The left has gotten really quiet about the lockdowns and the masks.
They have, haven't they?
It's so funny, right? It's like, if they thought they were right, they would keep bringing it up, but it kind of went away really quick. It's like, oh, let's not talk about masks. We didn't really mask up our kids, we didn't force you to get a vaccine that was an experimental drug, like that. We don't know what the effects are going to be still to this day. Like, we didn't, like, just forget about that. Well, I stood up and I said, the government, you don't have the right to tell someone they've got to put a mask over their own face or their kid's face, put something in their body that they don't want. And I took a lot of heat from it, but I was bold, and I said, I believe in standing for truth and standing up for people's liberties. I've also served on the Hamilton County Library Board, fighting the woke left that wants to put pornographic materials in the hands of children in the library. And that you think Congress is divisive and crazy. You should come to a library board meeting sometime in Hamilton County. I mean, you get these woke, like, nonsensical leftists that just think pornographic material in the hands of kids is the way to go. And I've stood up to them. I've not backed down and said, listen, we're going to defend. We have a moral obligation to defend the innocence of our children. I don't really care what you think about your standard of truth or whatnot, but this is right and this is wrong, and we're not going to allow pornographic material to fall into the hands of children. So we've been fighting that battle. I'm a constitutional literacy teacher. I teach constitutional literacy for a Christian school in Carmel as well.
Okay.
So again, I think I have a lot of. I'm a small business owner. That I do that in my spare time as well. I own a small business.
Spare time?
Yeah, right. It's a music school. We teach students how to play guitar, drums, vocals, keys, piano, all this stuff. So that's I've been involved in music my whole life, and so that's and then we're starting a coffee shop for our community to help rescue women and children from sex trafficking.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there's just a lot of things I really love making a difference, and so that's what I'm that's why I feel I'm very equipped in all areas of really important life, and I can be a great business advocate for small business owners. For my parents were a part of the Michigan Dairy Association. My grandparents were farmers, great grandparents were farmers. We have a family farm in Venedocia, Ohio. So I have a love for agriculture, and I would be the Secretary of Agriculture as well. So I think there's just a lot of I got a backbone. I'm courageous, and I have a resume. I think that would really benefit Hoosiers, and I'm willing to serve if they see fit to put me in there. So
okay. Yeah. All right. Awesome. I love it, man. Okay. So here's my question. And a lot of times I play devil's advocate.
Sure, please.
So assume you win during the convention, right? And we're looking at the general election with whomever wins in the governor's race.
Yeah.
So you plus whomever. What do you think, or I should say, how would you respond to, because Indiana's red, but there are still a sizable number of Democrats or undecided, people who don't necessarily identify as a Republican, people who don't necessarily identify as conservative. And how would you respond to those who would say, well, separation of church and state, and we don't want a pastor in the governor's mansion, even the secondary one, and
Yeah. So first of all, separation of church and state, if you know history, our founders never believed that the church shouldn't be the moral compass of government. They always believed that Christians and the Judeo-Christian ethic should be the moral foundation of our government. They wrote about it. It's enshrined all over our Declaration of Independence. If you go to Washington, it's carved in stone. You have Moses holding the 10 Commandments over the Supreme Court, etched in stone. You have, John Adams, one of our greatest, founders, and presidents. He said that our Constitution is wholly inadequate except for a religious and moral people. Basically saying we can't be free if we don't know how to steward this freedom. And the only way we're going to be able to steward this freedom is if we believe in the fundamental truths of God's word. Deuteronomy was the most referenced book of the Bible. The Bible was the most referenced book of history when our founders were creating the republic. The founders referenced the Bible 33% of the time. The second closest author that they referenced was Montesquieu and John Locke, and they were down to 8 and 7% of the time. So 33% of all of the founders' writings go back to the Bible, to Christian faith, right? Our founders, many of them were pastors themselves. You have James Madison, the father of the Constitution. When asked about the inspiration for the three branches of government, he said, I studied Isaiah 33:22. It says, the Lord is our judge, the Lord is our lawgiver, and the Lord is our king. It is he who will save us. And he said, in that moment, I knew that that's how God governs. We should create a system of government that creates those three branches of government, the judicial, the legislative, and the executive, judge, lawgiver, and king. And he said that's where that inspiration came from. Literally, the inspiration of our republic came right from God's word. When they were asked about the federal government, state government, county governments, and city governments, they said, where did that idea come from? They point back to Jethro in Exodus 18 when he tells Moses, you have to raise up leaders. You can't do it all on yourself. You have to raise up leaders over 1,000, over 100, over 50s, and over 10s. And they said that's it right there. That's the structure. Federal government's the thousands, hundreds is the state, 50s is the county, and 10s is the city. And they broke it up just that way. So literally, when people tell me that separation of church and state, pastors shouldn't have anything to do in the government, I'm thinking to myself, you have your freedoms and your liberties because of pastors and people who knew God's word. Even Ben Franklin, they always like to quote Ben Franklin and say, oh, he's a deist, right? He's a deist. Ben Franklin was only a deist for a short time in his life when he was a kid, when he was a teenager. He wrote an autobiography in his 20s, and he said, I used to be a deist, but then I learned very quickly that that's stupid, and I shouldn't be a deist anymore because there obviously is a God, and he does get involved in the affairs of men. And so even Ben Franklin later in his life said, hey, there's a God. He stood up at the Constitutional Convention in 1787, and these guys could not come together that they had the Articles of Confederation, but that wasn't working, and they couldn't come together to craft a constitution. And it was Ben Franklin, the oldest guy in the room, the wisest guy in the room. He stands up and he gives this amazing speech, and he references 14 different Bible verses. And he says to the guys in the room, he says, how do we think we're going to do this? If God knows when a sparrow falls, how will we build an empire? We'll be no better than those who strove to build the Tower of Babel. And we will be a laughingstock for all of history. And furthermore, it actually might be worse. We might discourage anyone from ever standing up for freedom again in the future. He said, I call on the clergy to come and open every single proceeding from here on out in prayer. They had a 3-hour prayer meeting. They called clergy in every single day after that. And they said, we got to pray. We got to pray. And you know what? It was in that moment when these guys started finding unity, and they crafted the Constitution, which is the greatest single constitution that's ever existed. The average lifespan of a constitution in world history, just so you know, is 17 years. We weren't the first constitution. We're going on 237 years right now of this country. That's unheard of. Yeah. And it's only because of God. So when people tell me, get your faith out of the government, I'm like, you have your freedom because of the Christian faith. And you want to throw that out? If you remove Christianity from the foundations of America, America ceases to be America. So I'm calling on pastors and churches and Christians and believers who know God's word to stand up and get involved. And I'm not going away. And I think as we do that, we do exactly what Patrick Henry said. Patrick Henry said, we were not a nation that was founded by religionists. We were a nation that was founded by followers of Jesus Christ so that, now listen to this, so that people of all faiths could have freedom to worship here. So that means if we uphold the Christian faith, that means the atheist is going to have freedom, the Hindu, the Muslim, the whatever you want to worship, you're going to have freedom to do it. But it all rests on the Christian faith, because every other faith says you must worship the way we tell you. Look at Islam. Islam says you worship the way we tell you to, or else we kill you, right? Yeah. You know, look at all these faiths. And so we have many faiths around. You got radical Hinduism in India right now that's trying to trample out all other faiths because they say you worship the way we worship, or else we're going to kill you. Christianity is the faith that says, hey, you have freedom. You have liberty. You get to worship how you choose. We're going to explain to you, like, there is one God, and you should follow Christ because that is the way, the truth, and life. However, God is a gentleman. He allows you to choose the way that you want to go. Now, you'll have to answer those you'll have to answer for that someday when you're standing before him. However, he does give you freedom. So again, I get passionate about that because I hear that a lot of people are like, separation of church and state. I'm thinking, man, you have no idea the foundations of our nation when you say stuff like that. Even Thomas Jefferson, who coined the phrase that we use, separation of church and state, he wrote in 1802 when he was writing a letter to the Danbury Baptist Connecticut Association, a pastor wrote to then President Jefferson and said, hey, I'm afraid that the government's going to tell me I can't preach what I want to preach. And he wrote back, it was a private letter to a pastor, and he says, hey, pastor, there's a wall of separation of church and state. You don't have to worry that the government's going to do what you dealt with King George and the British government. Right. And just so you know, we took Thomas Jefferson's private letter and almost turned it into Constitution. And Thomas Jefferson had nothing to do with the Constitution. Wow. He wrote the Declaration of Independence, but he had nothing to do with the Constitution. And yet our Supreme Court said, because Thomas Jefferson, who happened to be around at the time the Constitution was written, wrote it in a private letter, it must be constitutional law. It was the most asinine, stupid thing you could ever. It's just the conclusion didn't even make sense. And yet here we have the Supreme Court telling us because Thomas Jefferson said the word separation of church and state, that means there's no. Thomas Jefferson started a church, and they met on Capitol Hill in Virginia, and it was the largest church in Virginia, and he started it. And so it was, if he was a big time advocate for removing church from the state or just separating them out, he would have never done that. So anyway, but that's, like I said, I love American history and I could go on, but I digress. So
Right. No, hey, I really appreciate that because one of the things that I value, at least on this channel, is it's really important to me to present accurate information, especially in a historical context. And a lot of people are just simply unaware of the real history of this country. And, there's a lot of reasons for that and a lot of blame to go around. But at its base level, I believe it is absolutely critical. And it's one of the reasons I do what I do with interviewing candidates and stuff like that, is because I believe voter education is probably the single biggest way that we can restore this country to the constitutional republic it was founded to be.
Yeah. What have you given us, Mr. Franklin? A republic, madam, if you can keep it. And it's if you can keep it, right? Like it's ours to steward. And Hosea 4:6 says this in God's word. It says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." They're dying because they don't know any better. They're ignorant, and it's not they're dying because they're bad people, or they're not dying because they don't love me. He's saying they're dying because they don't know any better. And I think that's the problem. Going all the way back to Woodrow Wilson and FDR, they dumbed down our education system. I mean, the progressive era really started with Woodrow Wilson, and we had classical education, like a Socratean kind of education model all the way up until the early 1900s. And then you had the elitists, the Carnegies, and you had the FDRs, and you had the Wilsons. They needed really dumb people to work these really mundane, purposeless jobs. And so they started dumbing down our education system. John Dewey was a big part of that too. He created a system that dumbed down American children. Even things like the school bell. Where did that come from? Well, they wanted children to learn what it was going to be like in a factory. And so when the bell rings, you go to recess. When the bell rings again, you come back to your job. And that's even where that concept came in. So I think we've seen a big time dumbing down of Americans and American children and our public education system. And it's been intentional so that the ruling class can stay the ruling class, and that most people go down into the lower class, because if you're lower class, the ruling class will never be threatened by you. But who threatens the ruling class? It's the middle class. When you have a really smart, educated middle class, they can move up into the upper class. And then the lower class has a chance to get into the middle class. But you take away the middle class, then you just have the ruling elite and then all the slaves that work for them. And that's what they're trying to do. And so we have got to get our education under control. As lieutenant governor, one of the things I'm committing to everyone in Indiana, I will travel the state once a week. I will be in a middle school somewhere in Indiana teaching on American exceptionalism, on constitutional literacy and all of the things that made this nation an awesome nation that we get to live in and we get to steward. And so that's my heart. We've got to win the battle for the American mind, or else we might as well just pack it up and go home.
Yeah, the rest is irrelevant. I do agree with you wholeheartedly there. Yeah. It's absolutely critical to recapture the spirit of Americanism and American exceptionalism. Kind of real brief funny story. There's a restaurant in Valparaiso, Indiana, that it's called Industrial Revolution. And their whole thing is American exceptionalism. There's the original, the statue of the workers on the girder, right? It's a recreation of that, and it's outside the restaurant. Anyway, the point of it is that I called them to set up, back when I ran for Congress in 2020, I called to set up a meet and greet there. And I said, hey, I'm running for office. Is it okay? They're like, yeah, no problem. Are you aware of what we do here? And inquiring further, it turns out that all their food comes with little American flags, right, stuck in it. And they have various things on TV about the greatest inventions America has. There are people who literally start screaming and foaming at the mouth when they see these things. And they're like, we just want to make sure, because, I'm like, what? How can that trigger someone so badly to realize that America is what it is because of things like this?
Because America stands for what is good and what is decent, and it stands for truth. The American flag is more than just a flag. It's an embodiment of God's liberty that he has given to man. And so again, you got to remember, we're also in a spiritual battle, right? So there's a very real spiritual enemy that is attacking the things of God. And that America is standing for the things of God. Now, we're not perfect, but we ultimately, our values and our foundations are godly foundations. And so anytime the American flag triggers someone, I'm just saying, hey, that's the demonic, that's the lies of the pits of hell that are getting upset, because every time the pits of hell sees the American flag, they see things that God has said are true and are good and are decent. And so it's incumbent on us to not get afraid and not to back down, but to stand up and to hold that banner high, that American flag banner, and say, we're not going away. You shall not pass. We're going to stand for truth. And so I think that's what it is. Anytime I see a leftist getting triggered by something like the American flag, I just say, hey, that's a good thing, because we're over the target. And they know that if we can speak truth, the truth will get out and the truth will set people free. And the American flag, more than any other banner in the entire world, is the one banner that people associate freedom with. Who do you call on if you have pirates invading your ships in the Straits of Hormuz? You call on the American Navy. Why? Because the American Navy says you cannot steal somebody's things. You cannot steal somebody's life. And we believe in freedom, and we will come to your defense. Who do you call on when a nation like Russia is invading your borders, or when Iran is launching missiles into your nation? Who do you call on? You call on the Americans. Why? Because America has said, we will stand for what's right, and we'll go anywhere to do it. And we fought a war in the sea, overseas. We always go overseas to fight wars, and all we ask in return is that you would give us enough land to bury our dead. Right? We don't ask for money. We don't ask that you build our cities. We don't ask you to pay us retribution. We just say, give us enough land that we can bury our dead. I mean, that is the heart of the Father. I mean, that's John 15. There's no greater love than this, and the man that would lay down his life for his friends. So every time the American flag is lifted high, I really believe that those on the side of evil see it and they hate it so much because it reminds them of a good God. It reminds them of a God of freedom. And that's the God that our founders knew, and they created this nation, and they built this republic that has existed for 237 years and has been a beacon of liberty for millions upon millions around the globe. And so it's an honor. I mean, what an honor that we get to be children of that nation. And I don't think we can. I think 99.9% of the people in this country probably don't even have a clue when they wake up every day, the blessing it is to wake up here in the United States, and myself included. I mean, I take it for granted too sometimes, and I try not to, but we all do. So
yeah. At some point, we all do.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to get into a little more of the meatier questions. If you're ready.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Okay. First of all, which is really, really important to me, is how do you like your steak?
Medium. I just go right down the middle, medium.
Okay.
So yeah. All right. So I like a little bit of pink. I like there to be a little bit of blood, but
nice.
Not too much. Not too much. I don't want it to scamper off my plate. So I know there's some people that
are. Fair enough. Okay. I would say my wife likes it burnt, in my opinion. Well done.
Okay.
I, on the other hand, like my medium rare. So that's a nice.
I'm right in the middle there. I'm right in the middle. So yeah.
Yeah. Good deal. Okay. So my wife is a Medicaid waiver case manager. So we know that Lieutenant Governor, if elected, you'll be sitting on various boards that are absolutely crucial to her industry. So she has some very pointed questions that she wanted to make sure that I asked. First of all, she wants to know, what do you know about the Indiana Medicaid waiver program itself?
Well, I have not looked into it in great detail, but I do know we've had a Medicaid shortfall. Our budget has there's the $1 billion shortfall because of poor governance, and so I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm somebody that believes in oversight and accountability and transparency. And I think what's happened with the Medicaid program in Indiana is we haven't had that, and I think that's just that's cronyism. That's crony lobbyism. I'll call it that. Lobby, if that's a word. But we have a healthcare industry that really has turned into I would say almost a mafia state healthcare industry where it's you have these $1 billion trusts, these funds that have been endowments that have been set up by these nonprofits, hospital systems, and I think what's happened is we've kind of really given the hen house over to the fox a little bit, and so I think to me, what as far as the Medicaid program itself goes, I think what I would bring, and I'd be a hawk on this. I would say, hey, we want total transparency, we want accountability. I want to get the experts in the room. Now, I don't claim to be an expert on Medicaid waiver programs. I don't claim to be an expert on a lot of things, but I'm very good at finding experts. I'm very good at getting them in the room, and I'm very good at discerning, okay, who has the right answer for what the problem is. Henry Ford is a hero of mine, and he was once threatened by a lawyer in Detroit, and the lawyer comes up to him and says, Mr. Ford, I'm one of the best lawyers in Detroit, and I'm going to take you for all you're worth, and you better be pretty scared because you'll never be as good a lawyer as I am. And he looked at the guy and said, you're right. I'll never be as good a lawyer as you are. And you're probably a very good lawyer, and you're probably a good lawyer and the best lawyer in all of Detroit. But he said, thankfully, I've got the best lawyers in all of America and even the world on my team. And I'm not the one going to battle with you. They are. And then, and I love that answer because he knew he wasn't the smartest guy in the room, but he knew how to get the smartest people in the room to tackle a problem. That's how I am too. I'm going to get the smartest people in the room. I'm going to listen to the solutions, and then we're going to make the best collective, most transparent, most accountable solution possible. And again, I'm a limited government guy. I'm always going to default to the free market system fixing the problem first. Now, government plays a role sometimes, but I think the government has really overstepped, especially in healthcare, and we have screwed it up. Ronald Reagan said the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm with the government and I'm here to help. And I think that's true. That's the terrifying words. So let's get the free market in. Let's get people who have good business minds that aren't government people, but business people that say, okay, hey, how can we help? How can we help make Medicaid a viable option? And let's run the government a little bit more like we would run our businesses or our home budgets. You don't get to just spend willy-nilly. And if you had $1 billion shortfall in your family budget, you'd be freaking out a little bit, But here we are in the state of Indiana, $1 billion mistake. Oh, somebody was an accounting error. Oh, okay, that's somebody needs to lose their job, So
Well, that's actually one of the questions. So you answered it. Is how do you feel about the shake-up controversy with the big FSSA issue, do you feel that what the state did is appropriate? And it sounds like no, there needs to be more accountability, which
100%.
she wants to know. And I think you already said this. Do you think FSSA should be audited?
Oh yes, without a doubt, 100%. I
100%.
That's the first thing that came into my mind when I heard about this. Is like, well, who's been looking at the numbers? Like, well, how do we have $1 billion mistake? Like, there should have been audits. This should have been caught, months, if not years ago, before this happened.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's no audits. There are no, we don't have the transparency, and people want to, cover it up. And I'm not saying it's always due to malicious intent, but I think it's certainly due to at least ignorance and malfeasance. I think we've got to recognize that government is made up of imperfect people who they're not doing it maybe to hurt people, but they just make mistakes. And it's not bad to say, hey, I'm going to come over and check your work. You're going to come over and check my work. And that's what an audit would do. So yeah, I think an audit would be the first, that's the easiest, that should be the first step that we take without a doubt. So, yeah.
Right. What was really interesting to me was the gubernatorial debate, the most recent one. They brought up the FSSA issues.
Yeah.
And Suzanne Crouch was the only one first that has brought even the issue up.
Yeah.
But she was the only one that supported auditing the FSSA,
really?
as far as I could tell. Yeah. Which I found really, really
that's
interesting.
odd. Yeah. I would think it would be a no-brainer for all of them. And maybe they just didn't get to the answer, but I'm shocked that she would be the only gubernatorial candidate that would call for an audit. But she is also, to your point, she's the current lieutenant governor, and she sees a lot of that. And I hope that I would, likewise, be stepping into saying, hey, I can be a solution. I can help fix the problem. And so, yeah, that's why, as I've looked into it, I think an audit would be absolutely appropriate and necessary.
Okay, one more on this topic, and then we'll move on. And that's she wants to know, what would you do to protect the intellectually disabled?
Well, I think part of what we have to do is, first and foremost, I'm going to fight for parental rights. I think that's when I think about the intellectually disabled. I think first and foremost, like, God has given that person, hopefully, a parent or parents. And so we want to equip the parents with the resources that they need. I know that there has been talk of the government taking away these the help to parents who are raising children with disabilities, and I think part of it was because of the $1 billion shortfall.
Correct.
And so I thought that was the most egregious. Even the statement that the government say, hey, we misplaced $1 billion, and therefore we're now going to take away the helping hand that we've been helping with parents who are raising children with disabilities. We're going to take away some of your help because we, the government, made a mistake. First and foremost, if the government commits to something, let your yes be yes and your no be no. The government needs to honor that commitment. That's first and foremost. Now, I think we can make better commitments in the future, or lack thereof, right? But you honor the commitments. So from that perspective, I'm assuming your wife is hitting on that issue where the government said, because of the shortfall, we're going to remove some of these benefits from the intellectually disabled. And I would fight that tooth and nail, because we've committed to the intellectually disabled to do this. And now we're saying we're not going to do it. No, that's not okay in my book. But I would also say that it's not the government's job to care for the sick, the orphan, the poor, the needy, the widow. It never was the government's job. God designed government, and he designed the family institution. He designed the church. And what I would say is, as the government, we need to help nonprofit organizations, community organizations, to do the work of taking care of the intellectually disabled, or those who need special help, those who have special needs. The government does a terrible job being a hospital. The government does a terrible job being a counselor. The government does a terrible job being that parent for a child. But what the government can do is it can incentivize good organizations like churches, like community centers, nonprofits, to be the hands and feet of Christ, if you will, to be the hands and feet that will carry out that care. And, ask yourself this, why are hospital networks or systems that were started on faith. Why are they successful? You have they're amazingly successful. You have the Lutheran Hospital, you have the Methodist Hospital, you have St. Vincent, you have St. Jude's, you have all of these amazing hospitals that have, granted, they've got away from the faith, but to my point, they've been successful. Right. Why is that? Well, because they birthed out of the right institution, which is the church or the nonprofit world. Why is the VA not successful? Because it's a hospital system that was birthed out of government, and that was never God's design. Government will never be a good hospital. What the government should do is say, hey, we're not good at being a hospital. We're not good at being a parent. We're not good at being a counselor or a special needs provider, but we're going to help get the people in the right place. And we're going to incentivize or resource those organizations that's their gifting. I mean, I know so many amazing people in our community here in Hamilton County that love taking care of those who need help, and they're good at it. Why? Because it's their passion. Mm-hmm. And so government, get out of the way and help those people do what they're gifted to do. That's what the government's role ultimately needs to be. And I'm always going to say, government, you're not gifted to do this. Now, you can be the last resort. If you got a deadbeat parent, if there's no church, if there's no community center, if there's no nonprofit that's willing to take care of a child, it's either the government step in or that child go homeless. Well, then the government step in. We obviously want to have that safety net in place, but that should always be the last resort and not the first resort. And I think that's the problem. We've made it the first resort because it's the easiest. Just let the government take care of it. The government will take care of it. So that's how I would respond. I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. One of the interesting things that I've observed is growing up, my grandmother was always extremely involved in the church. Very, very Christian woman, very strong beliefs, very heavily involved in the church. But as I grew up and as she got older, as the church matured, it seems as if there are fewer, not necessarily fewer churches, but fewer helpful churches. I've seen, not that they're all this way, but it seems to me the larger a church gets, it seems as if the less they help.
Yeah.
And do you think that there's any correlation between our reliance on government for things like the intellectually disabled and people like that, that have no other options, and the reduction in church help and services in their local areas?
Yeah. So that's a great observation, and you're absolutely right. And I would argue that there's two things at play here. There's the church, and I'm going to say capital C church, like God's body, the body of Christ. We are called to be the hands and feet of Jesus. And when we don't do our job, it creates a hole, right? And so somebody else has to step in, and usually it's going to be the government that steps in. So the church in Indiana or in America hasn't really been doing its job. The other aspect is, I don't think the church always gets a call from the government. I think pastors and politicians always stay separate. And I think that's the problem. Politicians need to call pastors. Hey, pastor, this is one thing. I'll give you an example. At my church, Life Church, we have 4 campuses in the central Indiana area. We have an amazing partnership with an organization called Hands of Hope. And what Hands of Hope has, they have this thing called the Care Portal. And the Care Portal works with government and churches. It's the bridge between government and churches. When a child is getting ready to be removed from their home by DCS, because of lack of resources. So it's not because of abuse or anything like that. That's totally different. But just because mom and dad don't have the resources to provide for this child, what Hands of Hope will do is the government will call them and say, hey, we're going to have to remove these children from this home. Hands of Hope says, hold on a second. And they'll put out a call to their, I think we've got 70, 80, they probably have more now, but when we entered, it was about 70 or so churches that were in partnership in Indiana with Hands of Hope. And it says, hey, Hamilton County, here's a child that needs a bed. And can any church provide a bed? Every single time, without a doubt, somebody at the church says, oh, I can do that. And they'll order it on Amazon, ship it to that home. And now that child can stay in their home because the church stepped up. That's a great example of how government and church should work together. Yes. And that's what I would bring as lieutenant governor, is I would get to these churches, get to these pastors and say, hey, you can actually help the government by doing the job God has called you to do, right? And I'm a pastor, I can speak their language, and then communities can start thriving again. Homelessness will go down. People will start seeing, better parenting, parents being able to parent, not because of, and sometimes not even because the parents are bad parents. It's just they've fallen on hard times. Well, who should come in and help when you fall on hard times? It shouldn't be the government. It should be your neighbors, the church, those who really know you and love you and can help you. The government's never going to be able to help you. They can barely sustain you, let alone help you. And I think that's what I would bring as lieutenant governor, is to say, hey, I can be a little bit of that bridge between government and church and help communities really get back on their feet if they've fallen on hard times. So
I love that. I love that, because I have seen countless examples of the government and not through lack of, I guess, wanting to. It's not for, a lack of desire, but the government in many ways is limited as to how they can assist, the means that they can provide. And in many cases, really, the government just kind of doles out our money, and
money that they don't have, actually.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Money that we're borrowing from foreign nations to facilitate what ends up being something that should have been, like you said, taken care of in the local community in the first place.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really pleased with that answer. Elizabeth wants to know, does your church do Night to Shine?
So our church hasn't yet. We want to, but the church I actually used to work at did Night to Shine, and that's Tim Tebow's organization. It's an amazing organization. I love it. I mean, it is so cool. It's basically a prom for special needs people in the community, and it's like I helped with it when I worked at my former church, and it was amazing. I mean, it's like so much joy. How if you ever need hope or joy, go to a night to shine somewhere in your local community, and you will walk away with just a totally hope-filled, joy-filled experience, and it just changed. It's life-changing, really. So I love Night to Shine. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. That's my wife, by the way.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right. Hey, Elizabeth.
Dakota Euler would like to know. I'm sorry. I thought it was a question, but he wants everyone to know his friend Matt Smith. You're his pastor.
Oh yeah.
And he has to run to delegate to support him. So
I love it. Well, thanks, Dakota. I appreciate that. Yeah, Matt's great. His wife. Yeah, him and his wife are good friends. So
awesome. So if you could speak to the attaboys.
Okay, so Dakota, I gotta say something here real quick.
Yep.
That's not just an attaboy. Like you might think, okay, that's just like he's saying attaboy, Micah, way to go. So I helped start a Christian band when I was in college, and it was first called Hot Sunday, and you can see right back there, Dakota. So there's a Hot Sunday plaque. I got a T-shirt, drumstick. And then Hot Sunday later changed their name to Attaboy, and we toured the country as Attaboy. And that's how I got to know Matt. And we did some stuff up in Valparaiso, and so there's probably some people that are watching from Valparaiso that they might have seen me in that. But I want you to know, first and foremost, I like the name Attaboy, but Hot Sunday was really my heart, because we were a cover band in college. I went to Huntington, and we were a cover band, and we needed a name for our band. This is how Attaboy started. And so we didn't know what to call our band. And so there was a TV show at the time that we all loved in the band. It was called Saved by the Bell. And the girls in Saved by the Bell, Lisa, Jesse, and Kelly, there's an episode where they formed a band, and they called themselves Hot Sunday. And so we stole their name, created Hot Sunday. And then when we got to a point where we were like, oh, shoot, this is actually becoming a real band, we were like, we can't have the name Hot Sunday. We got to have it actually a legit name, so we changed it to Attaboy. Go figure.
Right.
So
that's really cool. That's
when he said that, I had to explain that, because I knew what you were saying, Dakota, when you said Attaboy, but probably nobody else.
Yeah, everyone else is like, okay, yeah, okay. That's an incredible story. I love that. That is, and that's my whole point in doing this, because anybody can. Which, by the way. Just to throw it out there again, if you guys want to learn more, especially delegates, you want to learn more about Micah Beckwith, go to his website or check him out on Facebook. The address is here. And they can go do that and they can learn, where you sit on various issues and stuff. But my goal in doing this is to give people an opportunity to see you, the person behind the campaign, the person behind the ads, behind the website and Facebook page, etc. Who are you really, and stuff like that about your band and the name. That's what I love, because it gives people an opportunity to meet the real you. Yeah. Which is the whole goal.
We're politicians were never designed to be kings and queens. We're just neighbors and friends and family members and community members. And it's a citizen legislature, everyone from the president to a city council member and everyone in between. And so if you think, if you ever think somebody is acting like a king or a queen, they probably shouldn't be in politics. Because we need servant leaders, and that's just me. I'm, hey, I'll do what I need to do. If you need me to clean the bathrooms in the state house, I'll do it. It doesn't matter. Wherever I can serve, I'm going to serve. That's what Jesus did for us. I mean, the one person in all of history that could have ruled as a king is God himself, Jesus Christ. And he stepped off of his throne, came down, took on the form of a servant, washed his disciples' feet, got down and dirty with people, like found people in their filth and pulled them out. If there's one person that had the right to stay on the platform and in the spotlight, it was Christ himself. And yet he said, I'm going to give it up and I'm going to come and serve. And so who am I to think that I should have the spotlight or have a platform when even the person I follow, Jesus, he came down to be a servant. So I got to act like he acts. I got to do what he does. And that means I got to be a servant and that means serving where I'm called to serve and just, loving on people as I go. So anyway, that's my heart and, why I'm running. And so.
Well, I greatly appreciate it. One last kind of question for you. And I think this, well, I'm just gonna ask it. It's not really controversial. It's just more like difficult to articulate. Okay. So Republicans generally get, we're lumped in as pro-life, but often Democrats, especially abortion advocates, claim we're pro-life up until birth, right? And then after birth, we don't care, which is, to me, hilarious, given that churches and organizations like that are almost exclusively run by Christians. But what is your response when they say, well, yeah, you might be pro-life up until the baby's born, but then you guys don't want to provide, services, WIC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
No, it's not that I don't want to provide services. I don't think the government's good at providing services. I want to get the right help, the best help possible to that single mom who's afraid because now she's pregnant and doesn't know what to do. I want her to be connected with people who really know how to help her, who can give her the things that she needs, the diapers, the clothing, the counseling, the friendship, right? To be able to walk through life. You need community. You don't just need the government to give you a credit card to say, hey, here you go, go take care of yourself. You need a community. Right. So it's not that I don't want to help people. It's just I know the government's terrible at helping people. And to the leftists, the people who are pro-abortion that want to say, well, you don't care about helping people. I say, no, you just want to throw something pathetic at somebody, and it's not even a lifeline. You think it's helping. It's not helping at all. And I want to actually provide better help than what the government can give. So I'm gonna reach out to crisis pregnancy centers. I'm gonna reach out to churches. I'm gonna reach out to these groups that have been started by people who have a heart to help, because guess what? They're gonna do way better than the church. And I am pro-life all the way until God calls you home. I want to defend life. I want to defend liberty. I want to defend somebody's pursuit of happiness all the way until God says, okay, your last breath on this earth is now, and I'm taking you home. And so I don't care if it's from, conception to natural death, anywhere in between. I'm going to defend your right to life. And because here's the deal. If you can't defend life as a politician, you will never defend somebody's liberty, and you will never defend their right to pursue happiness. That's the very first inalienable right given to us by a creator, and that's life. Now, isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting that the left, I don't know if you saw it recently on MSNBC, there was a panelist, and MSNBC gets some of the stupidest people to
They really do.
I don't know how they find these people, but they wouldn't know like up from down and left from right. But this lady was on there and she literally said Christian nationalists are defined by their idea that our rights come from a God. Like she literally said that. She literally said it. And I wanted to be like, who wants to tell her that the Declaration of Independence says that?
Yeah.
And here's why they're chipping away at that idea. Because if God didn't give you life, if God didn't give you liberty, and if God didn't give you the right to pursue happiness, guess who did? The government. Mm-hmm. And if the government gives, the government can take away. Right. And so abortionists, people who are pushing abortion, they believe that life really isn't from God. It's really from the government. Therefore, the government should be able to tell you, hey, your life isn't valuable. We can snuff it out. We can end it right now. And so that's what we're really up against. We're not really up against just an abortion lobby. We're up against people who really believe that life is not, it's not yours. It's the government's. And the government can do with it what they want to do with it. So the government says, yeah, kill that child, murder that baby. Then it's the government's prerogative because ultimately, in their eyes, the government's the one who gives the rights in the first place. Our creators didn't believe that. I don't believe that. I know probably many people listening to you right now don't believe that. And so I don't care if you're running for dog catcher. If you're not pro-life, I'm not going to vote for you because if you can't understand the value of life, you'll never understand the value of protecting my liberty. So I always ask people, even on county council, city council, auditor, treasurer, I'll ask them, I'll say, are you pro-life? And a lot of times if they're not, they'll be like, well, that has nothing to do with my office. I said, I don't care. Are you pro-life? And if they're, well, no, I believe in a woman's right to reproductive health care. I said, well, then I can't vote for you because you'll never defend my liberty then. Like, and the council does have things to do with my liberty because we just saw that in 2020. Yeah. A lot of county councils and city councils and health departments and commissioners, they tried to take away my liberty by saying I couldn't come out of my house and I had to wear a mask. And if they understood that our rights are not given to us by government, but given to us by God, they would have never done that. And so that's a good litmus test for anybody watching, the pro-life test. And if they fail that, don't vote for them. So, yeah. All
right. Listen, man, you're barking up the right tree as far as I'm concerned. I'm actually really excited. I purposefully didn't really look too much into you because I wanted a good organic conversation. I wanted an opportunity to kind of, to get to know you and see where you stood on stuff. I really can't think of any reason not to vote for you, but that's just me personally. Delegates out there, go to his website, learn about him. I thank you for taking the time to come on the show and talk to people directly and give them an opportunity to, educate them about you and learn who you really are.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Dion. And I saw a comment from your wife, Elizabeth. If delegates can't vote for the lieutenant governor, then what's the point of the convention? And I want to just real quick, because it is confusing. I get this. Some people are like, I can't wait to vote for you at the primary. And I'm like, well, you won't vote for me at the primary because I won't be on the ballot in the primary. And so the way it works, just so you know, you will have a chance to vote for delegates on May 7th in your area. So when you go to the primary ballot, May 7th in Indiana, the very bottom of the ballot, you're going to see a big, long list of delegates. And then you'll have the chance to vote for delegates. Those are the people that you're electing to go to the convention a month later, June 15th, and vote for me and then for the Attorney General Todd Rokita if at the convention. If there's anyone running against me or anyone running against Todd, then you'll have a chance to vote for them if you so choose. So you want to, if you're not a delegate and you're like, well, I didn't file to be delegate this year, then I guess I can't really do anything. No, you can actually do something really important. You can actually get the list of delegates that support me, and you can find that on my website, micahbeckwith.com, and we have counties listed. So go to your county and you can click on the county, and then you can find the delegates that have pledged to endorse me or to support me at the convention. Then you can go on May 7th and vote for those people and tell all your friends to vote for those people. And then they'll go to the convention and then vote for me. And then I will be on the ticket coming out of the convention with whoever the governor nominee is that we pick May 7th. And then we run together against the Democrat ticket. And then that's how we win. So it's it's representative government, right? It's
Yep.
you vote for people that will then go and vote for the person that will then be on the ticket to run against the Democrats. So some people are confused by that, but that's how a republic works, right? It's a republic, not a democracy, and we and it's representative. It's a constitutional republic. It's a big. Please, this is last thing, Dion. I'll just say this: a pet peeve of mine is when people call us a democracy. It drives me up a wall. So, if you're listening to this, don't ever say we're a democracy. Don't ever say democracy is under attack. It's a threat to democracy. We don't have a democracy. Democracies are not good. And here's why. Democracies don't protect the rights of the minority. Because if the majority wanted to murder you and steal your car, they could vote to do it, and they would be within their right to do it. You would have no rights in a democracy. A constitutional republic gives rights to the minority. And you could have 99 people say, I want to murder you and take your car. But a constitutional republic says the law says you cannot do that. And that one person has a right to life, just like all you all do. And so we are a republic. And Ben Franklin said, democracy is like two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for dinner. Mm-hmm. And then he said liberty is a well-armed lamb objecting to the vote. So so that's I think that's a good one to run on, or just to end on there for me. But just thank you for having me on, Dion. And if you have any more questions about the process or anything like that, I'd be happy to just email us at go to micahbeckwith.com and reach out, and we'll walk you through it.
Absolutely. And I appreciate it, you explaining the process, because it is a little unusual from what people are used to when it comes to our election process. So
and run for delegate next time. I mean, you can run for delegate if you'd like. We do a convention every 2 years. In 2 years from now, we will vote on the nominees for treasurer, secretary of state, and comptroller, and then we'll vote on our party platform. And so if you're like, hey, how can I get involved? A great place to start is running for delegate or running for precinct committeeman. And those are pretty easy roles, but they're important roles. And we need good constitutionally minded people to step into those roles. So we've seen more delegate engagement around the state of Indiana. I think, I don't know this to be exact, but I would argue it's probably historically the greatest turnout of delegates that we've ever seen in our state. I know in Hamilton County it is, but we have the most amount of candidates on our ballots here in Hamilton County, where I'm from, than we ever have historically. And a lot of it's because the delegates are coming out because they're excited about what I'm doing and how we're doing it. And it's kind of reinvigorated engagement. And so I think that's a great thing. People are engaging all over the state. So
absolutely. It's the same, just so you know, it's the same thing here. We have a ton of people on the ballot for delegate.
Yeah.
So I was shocked and pleasantly surprised when I saw that. We even have like multiple people running for precincts in places that we didn't even have anyone on the ballot that were always appointed because we couldn't get anybody to run for it. So
it's funny. What's happening, just so you know, it's either people who really like me that are running for delegate, and so there's a lot of passion on that side, or it's people who really don't like me and hate my guts and don't want me to win. They're running and they're getting their friends to run too. So, but either way, everyone's engaged. And I think, it's like, hey, if I'm the catalyst to get people engaged and get off their butts and try to maintain this it's a win. So I don't care, So
Exactly. So it's been a real pleasure speaking with you, and good luck. I'm going to be pulling for you, and if I win, I'll be voting for you. So.
Thanks, Dion. Appreciate it, and thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was Micah Beckwith. Like he explained, the delegates are the ones that will vote for him in the primary. Pay attention. Pay attention to your ballot. When and if you pull that Republican ballot, go in there with the mind, especially if you're voting for delegate, vote for the world that you want. And in this case, if you want Christian leadership, if you want solid conservative principles, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong personally. I like him. I like the band story too. I'm going to make sure and run all my little disclaimers so everybody knows. Just because somebody comes on the show doesn't mean we agree. conversations are conversations. If you or anybody you know would like to be on the show, email talk@dionbergeron.com. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, because we have a whole lot of people coming up to interview. And since primary is almost over, we're going to start getting into the really fun stuff, in my opinion. We've got bikers, we've got ghost hunters, we've got professional weightlifter, father and daughter team. I'm really excited about that one. That one is going to be a blast. So watch the channel. You can find us on X, YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, and we're adding more all the time. We're now, our podcast is officially listed on IMDb, and we're working on getting on Spotify. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me. As always, it's a pleasure, and I truly appreciate your time. God bless you, God bless Indiana, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
If you'd like to support the show, please visit our Patreon at patreon.com/Dion's Daily Dose. This has been Dion's Daily Dose, hosted by Dion Bergeron. Executive producers, Sean Holgram and Michael Beebe. Copyright 2024. Dion's Daily Dose, all rights reserved.